Welcome to Biztech's Enterprise Technology Show, the show where we feature enterprise technology companies operating across Asia, talking about their businesses and how they make a difference. Now, today our conversation, which is Ravi Saogi, the co-founder and president of Uniphore Asia Pacific. Now, Uniphore is a conversational AI technology company that sells software for conversational analytics, conversational assistant, and conversational security. The company has dual headquarters in both Palo Alto in California, as well as in Chennai in India. Now, Ravi, welcome to the show.
Hello, Brian. How are you doing today?
I'm very good. Thank you very much. And great to have you on the show. You're one of the pioneers in this business. And for a start, Ravi, could you give us a background of Uniphore, how you started the business, and what you do today?
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for having me on your show today. Uniphore started back in 2007, 2008 out of IIT Madras, which is one of the premier technology institutes down south in India. And we got hooked on to one of the incubators at IIT Madras, which really enabled us to execute the birth of Uniphore. And this was back in 2008. Since then, the company has been focused on developing deep tech products, which includes technologies like speech recognition, voice biometrics, emotional detection, a lot of AI and ML being enabled in terms of understanding what the person is saying and how are they saying it. And using all those components of deep tech, we have been able to bring in on board a conversational automation platform, which allows us to deliver it to large enterprises and deploy that over their contact center interfaces. Basically focus towards bringing in automation and AI in the contact center world, focus towards the front office, where exactly the conversation happens, and help organizations improve their overall customer experience, bring in cost optimization, and create revenue generation opportunities right at the heart of where the conversation happens in the contact center between the agent and the customer.
Okay, I want to take you back to 2008 again, because you've been in this business, from the early days, but the business has changed. How has automation and AI revolutionized the contact center business?
Well, Brian, back in 2007, 2008, when Uniphore started, this was a very nascent technology. While speech as a tech has been worked on since perhaps 1970s, when IBM bought its own first microprocessor into the game. But since then, a lot has happened. Having said that, speech is the most primal and most, I would say, the most easy way of communicating for human beings. And it is such a vast domain with umpteen number of languages, multiple different dialects, and the way emote as an individual, when we speak, that covers a long way, or that goes a long way in us communicating what are we talking about, what are we feeling, and what do we expect when we speak some of those things. So the world of speech, while a lot of work has been done in terms of research, it is an open era. It is an open area for us to really focus on and continue to do R&D on it. Even for the next 50 years, if we continue to focus on R&D activities, it will come up with new sets of things that we can actually innovate. So while we started back in 2007, 2008, and started the company with the focus on speech tech, since then, a lot of things have changed. And one of the cultural elements of Uniphore is the focus of innovation. I'm an engineer by education, by choice, and R&D and technology is deep to my own heart. And this is one area that we as an organization have been focusing on in terms of bringing in new innovations, new IPs, new areas of focus in terms of speech tech, RPA, artificial intelligence, and a combination of all that, which allows us to really understand what actually the person is saying. Now, when you said 2008 to now, what also has happened, Brian, is the market scenarios have changed, right? Back in 2007, 2008, people were largely using feature phones. iPhone just started coming out in the market. We had the BlackBerry as the most sophisticated device in terms of a handheld device. Coming from then and now, a lot of has changed. So if I call it a a scenario of 3 inflection points that has really changed how from market perspective. One, on the technology side itself, right? Artificial intelligence, speech tech, emotion detection, etc., has come of age, and how enterprises uses them has come of age. So that's one inflection point that got covered probably in the time of 2016-17 when organizations started looking at this kind of technologies. Second, from cloud perspective, earlier the deployments required us to use huge amounts of processing capability, but with the advent of cloud, the processing was rightly available at low cost, which today allows us to really process huge amounts of data on the fly very, very quickly. So that's the second inflection point. The third and the most important inflection point, Brian, is the inflection point of the usability by the end user. Us being comfortable in talking to machines back in 2008, 2009 was not there. But today we are surrounded by machines in front of us, which we talk to, be it our television sets, our home devices, our phones, and even to our smart homes, where we can switch on, switch off lights or pull down the curtains by just speaking to systems around us. So I think it's the 3 inflection points that have come together, which has really changed overall.
Okay, but Ravi, one of the things that is a sinister side or a darker side of this is the fact that human contact center agents and their use has obviously declined dramatically. And while AI is improving and a lot for the younger customers, you're right, they're probably very comfortable with dealing with an AI or a bot or non-human interaction. Older customers tend to like to deal with humans. What are your thoughts on this? And do you see a inflection point where we basically do away with human interaction completely from a contact center perspective?
In my own understanding, Brian, that's not going to happen. Let me share with you a couple of scenarios. When we talk about the contact center market going down, I don't think that's accurate. If you look at how things were pre-pandemic, the overall customer service market was about $380 billion, right? As per some of the leading analyst reports. And as soon as the pandemic stuck, we had a big issue of all the physical centers closed down, and accessibility of consumers to large enterprises went down from its own physical shape and structures. What really was enabled and available to us was only the contact center. Now, of course, multiple different channels, chat, email, but obviously phone call. And if you look at the customer service market post-pandemic, it has gone beyond and staggeringly grew from a $380 billion customer service industry to now a $500 billion customer service industry because of multiple different dimensions and facets being added to the overall customer service domain. Now, talking about AI and will we do away with the human beings completely? I don't think so again. If you look at as human beings, our immediate behavior when we face an issue or a trouble, while we first interface with a virtual agent over an IVR or over a mobile app, which is a chatbot, right? At the time of need, if a chatbot tells me that your action has been taken care of or your request has been taken care of, I still would like to talk to a human being. And that's a human tendency. And especially for people who are baby boomers or who are not so much comfortable talking to machines, they would obviously anyways like to talk to a human being.
Yes.
But generally, where I see things going forward is that it will be broken down across different segments of conversations that we as consumers like to have. There would be mundane tasks. There would be things where we don't need sophistication, things like knowing account balance or knowing a premium due date, etc., can be executed by an AI-enabled application. At the same time, when a complex transaction needs to be taken care of, then human beings or contact center agents will come into picture, but that will be supported by AI at the back end. So AI will continue to get activated in the virtual side of things, but that will continue as the conversations move from a mundane task to a complex transaction. AI will continue to listen on what the consumer and the agents are talking to each other, and then help the agent real time in doing the right call in the right way with the right compliance and providing the right customer experience. So what would have taken an agent to solve as an issue for about 10 odd minutes, now the support of AI can be solved in about 3 to 4 minutes. So you deliver a much better customer experience. And it's a combination of man and machine coming together. And that's how I see things moving forward. Now, if you look at one of the Gartner reports, which forecasts that by 2025, businesses that embed AI, right, in their multi-channel customer engagement platform will overall elevate the operational efficiency by 25%. So AI will get enabled in contact centers and across all customer channels, but it will be enabled along with a contact center agent who will be the centerpiece of this entire engagement.
Now, Ravi, because of the pandemic and the strong growth of your industry because of the pandemic, could you share with us some examples of how customers have deployed your products and have had amazing ROI out of it as a result of deploying AI in their contact centers?
Certainly, Brian. So I'll take an example of one of the largest telcos that we're working with globally. As the pandemic started, right, the challenge that we got into is that the number of agents, because they were suddenly shifted from a brick and mortar physical setup, which was a large building in which all the agents were working together, coming to the contact center floor and executing calls. From there, all of a sudden, all the offices were closed and agents were forced to work from home. Now, because of that, because of the systems, because of the network, because of connectivity, not all agents were active at the start of the pandemic, and which really impacted the overall enablement of those calls for consumers. So number of agents went down drastically. And at the same time, because we were not able to really access our services through physical stores, etc., we had no other option but to make calls. So the calls increased. There was an overall gap of about 30-35% in terms of the volumes being raised and the availability of agents. Now that really forced multiple different organizations globally to really adopt digital transformation at a quick fire pace, right? And what some of our products did was really helped organizations to bring down the overall call time, still delivering the best of experiences and execute the right customer output that was required on those calls, but at a shorter time frame. So one of the examples that I would like to share here is that when a call happens, the agent has to finish the call and then write a summary of that call at the back end, and then they dispose the call in the CRM where the call records are maintained. Yeah. Now, because we are listening to the entire call through our platform and our product, what really we can do is we can enable the entire summarization process post-call to be completely automated. So what would have taken an agent about 90 seconds to 2 minutes post-call to complete the process of disposing the call and writing the summary, etc., now can be done in about 30 to 40% only of time. I mean, it is shortened by about 60 to 70% time, the overall after call work process. Now, even if I take on an average, if I'm able to reduce 1 minute per call per agent, right? And in a day, if an agent handles 60 calls, then we are saving 1 hour per agent per day. Yeah. In an 8-hour window, that's approximately 15% of additional time that we're giving to an agent to handle more calls. And that is one of the changes that we have brought to multiple different customers across the globe with our real-time call analytics product and after-call work summarization process.
Now, Ravi, you're one of the pioneers in this space, but you've got competitors. You've got Haptic, you've got Volta, you've got Hexo Labs. What makes you special?
Well, every peer in the industry, Brian, have their own set of differentiating factors, have their own capabilities. And instead of talking about them, I think I would like to talk about some of the critical points that Uniphore brings to the table. First of all, I operate out of Asia, as you know, and one of the critical things for the Asian market is that most of the countries operate either on their own regional language or they operate on a dual language model, which is English and the regional language. And language differentiation becomes a big factor for us because we today cover across multiple Southeast Asian languages. We cover different variants of English. And of course, we cover a combination of regional language and English. For example, in Singapore, we call it Singlish, right? Yeah. And one of the differentiating factors, obviously, is that we have multiple different languages that we cover and deliver great output with those different dialects across these languages. The second is we believe that as an organization, while we have some great tech products to offer to our enterprise clients, technology remains an enabler only, right? What we really do is we work with our enterprise customers to focus on the kind of business outcomes they're trying to solve. And can our products work with their existing set of processes and infrastructure to help them achieve those outcomes? So it's an extremely outcome-driven enablement that we do for our enterprise clients. The third and the most important differentiating factor, Brian, is that the approach that Uniphore taken is a platform-based approach, and we have multiple products on top of it. We are not a siloed one single product entity, but we have multiple different products, which allows us to really cater to a conversation end to end.
Okay.
It can be a chat, it can be a voice, or it can be a visual conversation, and we can automate that entire conversation to a virtual agent. From there, as it moves to a real agent, we have an authentication product, which allows us to authenticate agents, especially who are working from home, to de-risk the entire security element. Then as it moves to a real agent and the conversation happens, we have the capability to real-time analyze and assist the agents in terms of coaching and giving the right guidance on the call. Then as soon as the call ends, we do a post-call summarization, as I explained to you. And then once all the calls are recorded and kept in the repository, we do 100% quality automation and check across all the calls done by all the agents through the product, and also do voice of customer analytics. Along with all that, there is an embedded layer of RPA, which allows the the robotic process automation,
okay,
which allows the systems to take some of those actions real time as the customers and agents speak to each other. For example, if the customer says that I want to change my address and this is my new address, the RPA will pick it up and keep that ready, and the agent has to just confirm to the bot that this is correct and click. In an earlier day, an agent would have clicked about 6 different tabs, added the address, and would have taken about 3 minutes. This happens in 3 milliseconds. That's how fast bots can take action. So there is an underlying layer of AI and RPA coming together to bring that automation. So that's a big differentiating factor, Brian, where it's a platform-based approach, okay, and not a one single siloed product-based approach.
Now, Ravi, you're based in Singapore. What are Unifor's expansion strategies across the region in 2022?
Thank you for that great question, Brian. Today, Uniphore is today present in about 10 different countries in Asia, including Middle East. Then we have obviously Southeast Asia, where I'm based out of Singapore. India is a big market. We already have presence in Japan, and we have presence in Australia, New Zealand market as well. Where Uniphore today is in Southeast Asia as well, we are present in Vietnam, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and Hong Kong. And Thailand is an upcoming market for us. What we really want to do from Asian market perspective, Brian, is to really upscale all of these markets now, given that we have seen enough success and we have clients and references across each of those markets locally present. Our teams locally present. This year is a big focus year for us in terms of uplifting all these markets with our additional products that are coming, and also really deliver successes to our existing customers and really build on the customer base.
Is this also because of the war chest that you've built up? You've raised 140 million in Series D earlier this year, and I think that brings it up to over 200 million in funds raised since you started. Is this part of the expansion strategy, and that's where the cash is going to be deployed?
Absolutely, Brian. If you look at the cash being deployed, of course, product is a big interface for us, and that's where most of the investments are going. Second round of investments are going in terms of market expansion. And of course, when we talk about market expansions, it's the people, it's the overall office setup, it's other aspects of business growth that needs to be taken care of. And the funding that we have raised obviously are going into all those elements and aspects of growth of business.
Ravi, it's been a fascinating conversation. It's been very educational for me as well. But before we leave, could you leave us with some final thoughts before we end the conversation?
Certainly, Brian, what I would like to touch upon quickly is that for any enterprise, right, which is a heavy consumer-driven enterprise, contact center is the most important element in terms of their interface with their consumers. That's the first touch point. And as a first touch point, that particular conversation can turn a customer into a churn scenario, can that turn a customer into a big promoter or a detractor. And that particular conversation also can turn a customer into a additional revenue generating customer. So contact center setup is an extremely important setup. And organizations who are investing into improvement of their customer experience will certainly go a long way in winning the market. I think the challenges with all the countries is that the number of consumers are limited. So how do you ensure that you stick onto your consumers and also uplift your revenue proposition with those consumers as we move ahead? So things like emotional AI, adoption of low-code, no-code AI, agent authentication, promise management, these would be some of the areas in contact center, which would be the upcoming ones, along with, of course, the regular basic stuff of agent quality automation, AST reduction, and all of those things. But these are some of the new areas that companies are focusing on in terms of new tech. And my piece of advice to all enterprises out there would be that customer experience is the most important focus area that it should be for all enterprises if they want to hang on to their consumers.
Ravi, thank you very much for taking your time to be on the show.
My pleasure, Brian. Thank you so much for your time as well.
Now, I'm Brian Fernandez, and I've been speaking to Ravi Sararogi, the co-founder and president of Uniphore Asia Pacific, on Biztech's Enterprise Technology Show. This video and podcast will be on our various social media platforms, as well as our website, www.biztech.asia. Please like and subscribe to our various platforms. Thanks again for tuning in.